don't plan in a silo when it comes to the investments in your RIF. If your income is low in certain years, you might want to consider taking more out of your RIFs to take advantage of lower tax brackets. And so when you take money out of your RIF, you want to make sure that you're... Hello and welcome to another episode of Your Retirement Planning Simplified. I'm your host, Joe Curry. And as you can see, if you're watching the video, I'm flying solo again. And you'll also notice if you watched last week's episode that I am recording this in a batch. So Lindsay is still under the weather. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about RIFs. So if you listened to the last episode, we answered the most common questions I get about RIFs. So what are they? How do they work? When do I have to take them? All that kind of stuff. So if you want the basics, go back to the last episode. But this time we're going to talk a little bit about some strategies to optimize your RIF, minimize tax is really what we're looking at here. So I'm going to dive right in. Again, so just building off the last episode. So number one is optimizing your withdrawals to minimize taxes, right? So there's some different things to look at. And some of my other points will go a little more in depth here, but you may want to only withdraw the minimum so you can delay taxes and get as much tax deferred growth as possible. You may want to just take the minimum when you do have to do it. So again, there's more tax deferral on the growth of those in investments, and you're not taking it out and paying tax any earlier than you need to. That said, if your income is low in certain years, and this could just be one-off years too, but you might want to consider taking more out of your RIFs to take advantage of lower tax brackets, right? So this is something I know with our clients, we're always getting tax returns. So we have an idea what income's looking like, and trying to figure out how cash flow is working throughout the year so we can see if there's an opportunity to potentially take some more out of the RIFs or maybe hold off on taking money out of the RIFs depending on the situation. We want to, again, I mentioned this last episode, but when you're 65, there will be pension income, RIF withdrawals. So if you're taking money from your RIF after age 65, it's pension income. And one of the great things about pension income is that you can split it with a spouse if you're married or you have a common law spouse. So after 65, we want to make sure we're looking for those opportunities to bring each other's tax brackets down. So if your spouse is in a lower tax bracket than you can allocate up to 50% of that pension income with your spouse. Deferring OAS clawbacks is another point we want to make sure we're looking at. So if your RIF withdrawals are going to push you into the old age security clawback threshold or push you past it, then you're going to want to plan your withdrawals carefully to minimize the impact of that, right? So maybe that means you just really want to take the minimum withdrawals, so you're having the minimum effect on your old age security. Or maybe you want to kind of plan ahead and you want to avoid future clawbacks by taking income earlier than you have to. So maybe through your 60s, you want to be taking income from the RIFs and you want to defer your old age security so that by the time age 70 comes and you have to take your old age security, now you have a higher old age security benefit, which is guaranteed and indexed to inflation for life. And at that point, you have a lower RIF balance in your investment account because you've been taking money out through your 60s. And so you're less likely to have those RIF minimums push you into a higher tax bracket. And now you went from investment income, which is a little bit more volatile, to having a higher amount of guaranteed income with your old age security. You might want to, if you haven't already, consider using TFSAs to shelter some of those withdrawals. So you have to pay tax when the money comes out of there. But if you don't need the money today and you haven't maxed out your tax-free savings accounts, you probably want to take some of that income and you want to move it into your tax-free savings accounts. And so this is sometimes we'll look at combining this with one of the other strategies we just talked about, which is maybe taking more than you need out of your RIF, whether it's because you want to avoid future OAS clawback or because you're in a lower tax bracket. But if we have unused tax-free savings account room and there's an opportunity to be moving money out of your RIFs in a reasonable tax bracket, then we might want to look at doing that, just taking the money out, not spending it and rolling it right over into your tax-free savings account. It's important, and we talked about this last time, but we want to make sure that you're planning the asset allocations of how you're investing in your RIF. You want to make sure that's aligning with your income style and your retirement plan. So don't plan in a silo when it comes to the investments in your RIF. You want to make sure it's fitting into the larger plan help maximize the chances of you reaching your retirement goals. So I talked a little bit about considering the early withdrawals. So you can take withdrawals long before you have to at age 72, right? So this is something that a lot of people, I get kind of both scenarios on this. A lot of people are very much, I have to just defer and delay as long as I can. I don't want to take any money out or pay any tax by taking money out of my RIFs. And then we have people on the other side of that are like, I don't want anything left of my RIFs. You know, my parents had $100,000 left in their RIFs when they had both passed away, and I had to pay $50,000 taxes on that. And I'm not doing that to my kids. So they're over aggressive in taking money out of the RIF. So I'm kind of repeating the point here, but considering when you are taking the withdrawals, whether you're delaying withdrawals, whether you're taking early withdrawals, it really needs to be lined up with what are your goals, what are we solving for, and then what's your situation look like, right? Because if you're a high income earner, if high assets that are just going to naturally create a high amount of income, even if you don't want it, then it might make sense to be deferring your RIFs because you're going to pay too much tax when it comes out of there. The flip side of that is if you have a lot of maybe tax efficient income, or you just have low income in general, it could be making sense to be taking money out of those RIFs and moving it somewhere else. Another reason why you might want to delay your RIFs as long as possible is maybe you're working. So if you're still working through your 70s, and maybe you don't need to work, but you just want to, we've talked about that on a lot of different episodes. It probably makes sense to just defer taking money from your RIFs. And you probably want to defer taking old age security as well, as long as you're working, because you're going to be in a higher tax bracket, right? So wait to take that RIF income until you're not working and you're a lower tax bracket. And again, same with the old age security. You want to make sure you have set up your spouse. So assuming you're married to have a common law partner, you want to make sure you set up to have your spouse as beneficiary on your RIF or RSP, because if something happens to you, that's going to allow that account to transfer tax-free to your spouse. So when the surviving spouse passes away, or if you're single and you pass away, that's fully taxable as income. There's not much you can do about it for the most part, other than a couple of unique situations for financially independent or dependent kids, or leaving money to charity can offset, which we talked about in the past. But other than that, the only real opportunity to have that money moved tax-free when you pass away is if you have a spouse and you can roll it over to your spouse. You want to make sure, and this comes to, I talked about not planning in a silo with your RIF for the investment side of things, but it's just also with when you're taking income, right? So it's really the retirement income planning piece is figuring out what are all your different income sources. So do you have old age security? Do you have CPP or Canada Pension Plan? Do you have a pension? Do you have tax-free savings accounts? Do you have non-registered accounts? Do you have locked-in money like a LIRA? So these are all potential income sources you're going to have in retirement. And so when you are factoring in how and when you take money into your RIF, you want to make sure that you're planning it out with all those different income sources to figure out what is going to give you the most tax efficient, not just tax efficient today, but tax efficient over your lifetime means for getting that money into your hands and helping you create a sustainable income and meet your estate planning goals if you have any. And this kind of planning is not something that you just do one time. You don't say, okay, here's the plan, set it, forget it, follow the action list even 5 years later from the original plan. That's not how it works, because everything changes. The amount of money you actually spent is not going to be the way that you initially planned it to be. There's going to be things that come up that you just can't prepare for. The market is going to react differently than what you put into the financial planning software, what your planner did. Your goals may change, right? So there's so many things that change over time, and you need to make sure that you're revisiting this on at least an annual basis to think about how you're moving forward and how you're adjusting those RIF withdrawals, or when you should be starting those RIF withdrawals, or if you're just taking a one-off RIF withdrawal, right? So a lot of different variables to consider for sure. And then if you're lucky enough, like some of our clients, you're getting or you have to take the RIF minimum because you've reached the age where you need to take it, but you don't really want it. You have enough income to meet your lifestyle goals. You don't want to pay the taxes on it, but you have to take it. So just some things to think about. If you have this extra income coming through, a lot of the times you have this extra income and these higher asset values is because you're a really good saver, right? And so I want to make sure you think, have you had that paradigm shift to go from being a really good saver to actually enjoying your retirement, right? Because if you're someone, again, who is a good saver, the better the saver you were, the harder it is going to be for you to spend your money. So if you know you have extra cash flow coming in that you don't want to have coming in or you don't need, it might be an indication that you're not really maximizing your life because you're still in that savings mindset. So again, it's very helpful to get you to retirement, but you worked a whole lifetime to this point. You might want to try enjoying some of that extra cash flow if you're fortunate enough to have it. So think about maybe, is there things you can do just to make life more enjoyable? Is there bucket list trips you've always talked about that you haven't gone on? Take some of this extra cash flow for that. Can your family use some help at this point rather than leaving it to them when you're no longer here, so you can actually see them use it? So maybe there's some gifting to the kids, or maybe there's charity or organizations that are important to you. That's a way to offset the tax coming from that income that you may not need from these higher RIF withdrawals. Maybe you could buy yourself time so you can enjoy life to its fullest. So maybe that means paying someone to plow your driveway. Maybe it means getting someone to do your lawn maintenance, things like that, so that you're not spending time there, but you're able to spend more time doing the things you love with the people you love. If you haven't already maximized tax-free savings accounts, making sure you're maximizing those. Or if you're meeting all of those goals and you feel like you still have extra cash flow coming in that you really don't need, and you don't want to give it away right now, you could always look at, how do you maximize your estate? So maybe you're putting money into a life insurance policy to maximize your estate value for the next generation with, really low risk and kind of maximum tax efficiency. That might be an option. So a lot of different things to consider if you are fortunate enough to have that extra cash flow coming in. But what I would say is, don't take it for granted. You worked hard to get it. So be intentional with it. And again, make sure that comes back into your planning of optimizing and paying the least amount of tax so that you're having the maximum impact with your money. So all these strategies I just talked about, this is not all encompassing. It's just some things that come to mind and a lot of things that we're talking about with clients. So not all of these are applicable to you, but some of them are probably applicable to you. And that's where planning comes in. So make sure you get, number one, from an action standpoint, is you're clear on your goals and what you're trying to achieve. And number two is, make sure you start educating yourself more on these strategies and other strategies around retirement income planning, so that you are making the most of your money. Or if you're getting help from a financial planner, you understand what's going on. Because what I can tell you from working with a lot of clients is that the better you understand this stuff, the easier it is for you to stick to your plan and not make any big mistakes that are going to blow up your retirement. So really important. That's why we're really big on education, a big part of why we do this podcast. So if you want to educate yourself more, make sure you check out our website if you haven't been there already, retirementplanningsimplified.ca. You can find all of our blogs or podcast episodes, and we just have well over 100 different episodes and blogs on there now. So lots to learn when it comes to retirement planning. Hope you enjoyed this episode and looking forward to joining you again next week. Take care.